Hi guys, perception is everything in politics, so you would imagine that a growing economy, even by a little bit, would give a boost to the Conservative Party as we get closer to the general election. Rishi Sunak took over from Liz Truss, inflation is lower, there was a tiny boost in GDP, and perhaps the Conservatives can drive this message home to thwart the threat from Labour. That is not the case, as Scarlett Maguire from JL Partners points out to Evan Davis. She explains that even this saving grace for the Tories could actually harm them. Have a listen.
What's very striking is how nothing Rishi Sunak and the Conservative government have done has managed to turn things around. They've tried different ways, different approaches, different pitches to the public. None of it seems to work.
Absolutely none of it has worked. In fact, if anything, things look like they might be getting slightly worse for the Conservatives. There is actually a danger for Rishi Sunak that if the economy improves, and he's increasingly getting up on a podium, if he's doing TV interviews, he's talking to people and saying, the economy's getting better, you've got to stick with us, you've got to give us credit, the public will be even more likely potentially to say, get lost. Because I think one thing that he in particular is prone to, and this is where the fact that people see him as out of touch and too rich really to be Prime Minister is particularly relevant, is that I think there's this sense sometimes that people feel, at least that's what they say to us, that he's sort of gaslighting them, telling people to be grateful for an economy that they're not feeling the benefits of. And I think they run the risk of that actually if they then try and go into an election campaign with a message on a very positive economy if people aren't necessarily feeling it yet.
Completely correct. You know, you have this multi-millionaire, a guy worth about £700 million, who's married to a woman who's worth £1 billion, I believe, trying to tell members of the public that everything is great, that, you know, a corner has been turned. Like, you see scenes where Rishi Sunak goes to warehouses where people are probably on minimum wage, telling them about how, you know, times are tough and we all have to work together. A guy who's worth hundreds of millions of pounds. When he tells you the economy is doing well and everybody's doing well, and you look around you and you see the reality of the opposite, more and more people relying on food banks, teachers having to provide food and clean clothes to children, nurses going to food banks, you know, an absolute disaster. Shops on the high street closing down, more and more antisocial behaviour. There's no point talking about how, well, GDP has increased by 0.1% or the economy is improving if people don't see it on the ground. Now, what was raised here also was how, well, things aren't working. The Tories have tried a number of things and none of them have actually increased their chances of holding on to seats or winning the election. The reason for that is because they actually haven't focused on what people care about. They have thrown hundreds of millions of pounds at Rwanda when the vast majority of people don't care about immigration. They care about the cost of living crisis. They care about being able to pay their rent or pay their mortgage or pay their bills or feed their family. These are their priorities. They care about the NHS waiting list. How long will they have to wait for an appointment? Will they get treatment? And then how long will they have to wait before they can get back into the workplace? These are the priorities of the public. Smaller class sizes, crumbling schools, these are the priorities. And what do the Conservatives focus on instead? Immigration, because they're chasing the Nigel Farage vote. Woke stuff, the culture war, because they believe that that's in some way important because they're probably just listening to the likes of GB News and Talk TV. And instead of actually listening to the public and saying, okay, what do you want us to do? They start going in the opposite direction. And I think it comes down to money. They don't want to spend money on public services because if they actually improved public services, then they would actually be able to reduce a lot of the problems that they're facing with the electorate. If people saw fewer food banks and more people having a job and having a better quality of life, then they'd be more likely to turn around and say, well, actually, maybe we should stick with these guys because they're actually improving things. But they've done the opposite over the last 14 years. So finally, we have even good news is bad news for the Tories. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.